So, you want to reach Gold 3 in Marvel Rivals and get your free skin, but there's one problem. You can't carry. Well, turn that problem upside down because today I'm going to show you how a mid-gamer with average aim can quickly and easily reach Gold 3. I'm going to explain a few basic principles that will make it so easy to climb, even if you're learning a new character, and even if that character also happens to be one of the weakest characters in the game, you won't have a problem. I'm going to show you how I reached Gold 3 with just 5 hours of competitive game time on one of the weakest characters in the game, Jeff. For context, I'd only played Jeff for a couple hours before I started playing comp, and you'll see throughout this video that my Jeff gameplay is far from top tier. I make tons of mistakes and my positioning is pretty bad a lot of the time. I'm definitely learning as I go, but I wanted to show you that you don't have to carry or be the best player in the lobby to climb, at least to Gold 3. People often say it's hard to carry as a strategist. A lot of the time I see people telling strategist mains that are having trouble climbing that the solution is to just pick a duelist and carry. But what if you like playing strategist or your favorite character isn't a duelist? Well, then people say pick a strategist that can carry. And they're right. If you can carry, if the character you like playing is strong, just do it. What are you waiting for? Why are you here? But what are you supposed to do when you just aren't good enough to carry? When the character you enjoy playing is weak or your aim, confidence, positioning, or understanding of the game aren't the best? Well, mine definitely aren't the best, and I can tell you what I did to climb. I chose to do this on Jeff, but a lot of the advice applies to any character or role. So if you aren't a Jeff main or even a support main, you might still find some tips that will help you in this video. And if you are a Jeff main and you're looking for a video on how to play Jeff really well, this isn't it. The reason I chose Jeff is that right now he's generally considered to be one of the weakest strategists, if not the weakest character in the game. At the time I'm making this, Jeff has across the board the lowest win rate out of all the support characters. Actually, the only character in the entire game that does worse than him right now is Widow. He does the best and is picked most often in bronze, and both basically go down from there. But Jeff is actually the most played character in quick play. So this video goes out to any strategist mains who are having trouble climbing to gold, and any quick play enjoyers who are afraid to dive into comp with their favorite fishy friend. I'm here to show you that it doesn't matter if people think your character is bad. You can take a bad character, play them kind of badly, and still climb. If you actually know how to play your character, you can climb even faster. I'm gonna take you through some of my bronze and silver games and give you a few examples of easy things you can focus on in each rank to win more games. I'm gonna let us all learn from my mistakes along the way and point out some things I think I should have done differently as well. And at the end, I'll tell you the most important things you can do at any rank from bronze all the way to the top to give yourself the best chance of winning, and it has nothing to do with how you actually play the game. Before my first comp match, I spent a few hours playing Jeff in quick play, basically just getting comfortable with his abilities. I didn't look up any guides, and I actually still don't even know what exactly his team up with Luna does. I wanted to start basically at the bottom and learn as I went. So after hitting level 10, I jumped in. I'm gonna take you through this first game in some detail, just to highlight some of the mistakes I was making. Then we're gonna speed through the rest of the games. Along the way, I'll explain what principles I'm following to do well. We started with Yggdrasil defense, and I made a few mistakes right off the bat. At the very start, I put the bubbles super far back. I'm also playing much safer than I need to. Jeff has great mobility. He's tiny, hard to hit, and can easily escape, so there's no reason why I shouldn't start on high ground or somewhere I can get a few shots in on the other team before my team takes any damage to start building my ult charge a little bit early. But this is how to win without carrying, so you'll see I don't play very aggressively or optimally throughout. After healing my team, I noticed the other team isn't really playing that aggressively either. No one is flanking and no one on my team is really taking that much damage, so I decided to go on a little flank adventure myself. I actually kind of do this at a bad time because our Psylocke just went down, giving us a numbers disadvantage, and I accomplished basically nothing and overextend. Luckily, the other team doesn't punish me for being out of position. I'm also lucky they didn't press their numbers advantage, or some of my teammates easily would have died while I was off on my little journey. We're down a person, but the other team doesn't seem to notice. The Punisher ults when most of my team is barely in his line of sight, so they get out of the way pretty easily, but I know our Groot is going to take a lot of damage, so I start healing him. Our Psylocke gets back from spawn right as the enemy Moon Knight takes out Dagger and Squirrel Girl. Luckily, the enemy's cloak ended up meeting Squirrel Girl in hell, but that still leaves us down one. Penny ults at the same time as our Mr. Fantastic flings himself at their spawn doors. I probably could have gone for the high ground to support Mr. Fantastic, but the Penny completely distracted me, and instead I try to lure her into a room to waste her ult. Then I waste some time rotating around and get back just in time to see Psylocke is about to be mauled to death by Wolverine. I save her life and Wolverine goes for cloak instead. I follow Wolverine into a dark alley where he picks me up by my ankles and shakes all the loose change out of my gills. But luckily, he leaves me alive. I head back through the building and I make a big mistake. I ult in Penny's nest, which is usually a Jeff killing speedrun, but because she had literally just placed it while I was ulting, there weren't enough spiders in it yet to kill me, and I projectile vomit her and Logan off the edge. But oopsie, I swim a little too far forwards and fall off myself. Coming out of spawn, I don't give myself a bubble boost, which is a mistake, but on the way back, I see Moon Knight out on a lovely stroll, and I decide to fight him. I probably should have bubbled myself before engaging, so that I would have had some healing over time if he did hit me, but luckily he doesn't even try to attack me, and I take him down pretty easily. I get back to point, throw down some bubbles, and help my team take out the flank Penny nest. Then I help them finish off the Iron Man. I go for the Penny nest first because in bronze your team is drawn to it like a magnet. They love to stand in the bone hurting webs and get blown up. Since I can't trust them to avoid it, it has to go. The Iron Man hasn't really been doing much so far, so I'm far more worried about the web killing someone than the Iron Man that they're already trying to take down. I can see Thor is fighting somebody above me, so I jump up to see if he needs help. I know Wolverine can do a lot of damage to him, so I try to help out. Luckily, Wolverine does nothing, and we kill him easily, and then hold the point and the round ends. We switch sides, then I waste some time climbing and falling off a wall. I tunnel vision on the Iron Man and fail to shoot him until my Moon Knight dies next to me. Then totally on purpose, just to prove that I'm not carrying, I walk into several mines and get beamed to death. Luckily, my team keeps pushing while no one on their team contests, and we win the game. The first 4 games are about the same. I stay mostly behind my team, focus first on keeping myself alive, and second on keeping my teammates alive. I don't do much damage or get too many kills. I mean, I help my team with tricky or really threatening targets. Sometimes I help them finish someone off, but mostly I just focus on keeping my team alive. And this works fine until... The cracks in my inexperience with Jeff and bad positioning are starting to show. Against the first real dive teams I'd faced, I was getting farmed, but I mean, we still won, right? The next game probably won't be so bad, right? I was getting absolutely destroyed, and I didn't know how to adjust. This would have been my rank up game into Bronze 1, but because I didn't know how to respond to the Iron Fist, it ended up being my first loss. At the time, I remember thinking the Iron Fist was just really good and there was nothing I could have done, but watching the game back, it's clear that my positioning and bubble mismanagement is the reason that I die most of the time. And maybe even if my positioning was perfect, we still would have lost. Maybe he would have gone for an easier target and nothing would have been different in the end. It's hard to say. Sometimes you're just dealt a losing hand, and after all, you're only one person on your team, and there are a lot of things completely out of your control which can cause you to lose a game. Maybe your teammate's game is crashing. Maybe their internet is bad. Maybe they haven't been eating enough crystals lately and their auras are weak. But I kept playing, and before I knew it, I hit silver. So what should you do to climb out of bronze? What's most important? Well, I'm gonna give you 3 basic principles you can follow to win most of your bronze games. And after we look at the silver games, I'll explain how you can expand on these principles to make it out of silver just as easily. The number 1 most important thing you can do is stay alive. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh my god, it's that easy? Why didn't I think of that? But let me explain. There's a couple things that you can do to die less. Every time you die, you waste time waiting to respawn and walking back from spawn while your team loses the fight. So number 1, you're going to want to put yourself somewhere where you have access to healing. This usually means somewhere where your strategists can see you, but it could also be near a health pack or another source of healing. If you are the strategist, try to be somewhere where the other strategist can see you. If there is no other strategist, open the chat and start begging for your team to switch to a second strategist. You have the best chance of being healed and not dying when you put yourself somewhere where your team can support you. Let's say this is your strategist on the left and you on the right. When your strategist can see you, you get healing. Now, what happens if you were to put the entire city of New York between you and your strategist? Well, as you can see, this kills you, and the stress causes your strategist's hair to fall out and her to lose her hand to gout or something. This is bad. Don't do this to your strategist. Another way you can stay alive is to use natural cover. If you put yourself somewhere where you have some cover from the direction that most damage is coming from, you are less likely to die because you'll take less damage. Unbreakable walls are like shields with infinite HP. You can take advantage of natural features of the level to block some damage coming towards you by standing near a wall, cornered in a doorway, or on high ground. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say this is your team on the battlefield. If Iron Man dropped a fat nuke in the middle, which of these people would live? That's right. All the people on the left would probably live because they can hide behind the cover they're standing near. But what about this guy on the right who's standing in the middle of the road? Oh my god, they got nuked to death and all their arms and legs flew off. That's crazy. My last tip to stay alive is to pay attention to the kill feed. Keep track of how many people on each team are still in the fight and who's respawning. If you don't know, there's a helpful setting you can turn on in the menu that plays a different sound depending on whether a member of your team or the other team dies. And what happens if you're not paying attention to who's dying and when? Well, let's say you die first, heroically, respawn, and you're ready to go. You run right back into the fight, but oh no, you weren't paying attention and you don't know that the rest of your team is still respawning 100 feet behind you. Well, what happens? Oh, that's crazy. You're the only person on your team in the fight and everybody on the other team focuses you, killing you instantly. Wow, this is called staggering, and this is a huge problem in low ranks. Try not to do this. Go in with your team. If they are respawning, if you've lost the fight or lost control of the objective and the majority of your team is respawning, wait for them before you run in and die. The second principle you can follow to win more games is to keep your teammates alive. I know you're thinking, that's impossible. I always get put on the team with the worst teammates who can't walk 10 feet out of spawn without being blown up. But remember, the majority of the other team is also made up of these same terrible teammates. There's a few things you can do to support your teammates more than the other team is supporting theirs and give your team the edge, stay alive, and win. Support your teammates' plays if possible. If you play a character that can heal, buff, or give any other characters some kind of advantage, use your abilities to give your teammates as much of an advantage as possible when you see them engaging with the other team. If you see your teammate putting themselves in a situation where they would die alone, try to either help them win the fight or get out alive. At these ranks, your teammates will make plays that you think are stupid, but they're much less likely to be punished for risky plays than they would be at higher ranks. Try to push the limits and see how much you and your teammates can get away with before the other team punishes you. Who knows, you might hold them at their spawn doors. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say your team's on the left and the enemy team's on the right, and you notice that your Hela is targeting the Iron Man floating above the enemy team. How can you support her play? Well, you can give her a shield, a damage boost, or you can also target the Iron Man and help her take him out faster. And this ties into my second tip for how to keep your teammates alive. Help your team take down tricky or threatening targets. Let's take a look at that example again, but this time you're the Who should you target? The tanks on the front line that are being healed, or the Iron Man floating above the team? We know now that the answer is Iron Man. But what would happen if we shot the tanks on the front line instead? Well, if Iron Man notices you're not paying attention to him, he comes up behind you and beams you and your team to death. That sucks. My last tip to keep your team alive more is to break the other team's stuff. Certain characters' kits rely on throwing silly little objects around the map. Break these things before they kill your team. Penny's nest? Broken. Squid turrets? Calamari. And most importantly, the Rocket Revive Station. This doesn't hurt you, but it's a powerful part of Rocket's kit. Think of it like a 7th member of the other team, but one that can't fight back. If Rocket throws it in the middle of the street, please break it before it has the chance to revive somebody. And the last principle you can follow to escape gold is just to communicate as much as you can bear. Listen, I know, I don't want to be in the voice chat either, and I'm not saying that you gotta be. Any kind of communication can make a huge difference in low ranks. Communicate to whatever extent you're comfortable with. Obviously, voice chat is best and easiest, but it can also be extremely toxic. Even the text chat can get pretty wild sometimes. And don't forget you do have the option to disable both of these if they're too much. Just know yourself and your limits. If the voice chat and the text chat are too much, you can communicate a lot using the in-game ping system, and you can even add more different ping messages in the communication settings. What types of things should you be communicating at bronze? Well, number one, if you see somebody flanking, let your team know who and where. It's also a good idea to remind your team to group up if they're staggered, or if you see somebody keeps running in by themselves and dying. And last, if you see something going wrong on your team that's probably going to end up costing you the game, you can politely suggest an adjustment in the chat. Usually, as long as you're not a dick about it, people are pretty receptive. Not always, though. Something else to keep in mind is that at low ranks, you can't expect anyone to understand how any character's kit works, including their own. If you see someone on your team being exploited by someone else's kit, like your whole team standing in Penny's webs and being blown up all game, politely explain to them what they could do differently. For example, as Jeff, at the start of every single game, I would politely remind people that my bubbles will heal them if they manage to walk into them before they die. By doing this, I noticed More people were using my bubbles instead of dying next to them and ignoring them, and we won more games. I know that seemed like a lot of information, but let's break it down to just the basic 3 principles. Number 1, stay alive. Number 2, keep your teammates alive. And number 3, communicate as much as you can bear. If you follow these principles, you'll climb out of bronze in no time. But what about when you hit silver? Things started pretty good in silver with a couple wins. I made it to silver 2 quickly, but then I started losing. And losing. And losing even more. And then after 2 back-to-back games where someone on my team disconnected, I decided to call it a night. I'd been playing for a couple hours at this point, and I could feel that I was getting tired and playing on autopilot. But before I went to sleep, I thought back on the games that I was losing. What was I doing wrong? I usually wasn't dying too much, but I also wasn't doing a lot of damage. I thought about the games where Iron Fist fed me a gross of knuckle sandwiches, and I figured the issue was a combination of lazy positioning and heal botting. I wasn't dying too many times, but I was killing even less. The next day, I was ready for murder. Wait, this is all wrong. I can't play music this cool over a montage of me not carrying. I was on a roll. I was playing just a little more aggressively, and it was making all the difference. I usually still had the least kills on my team, but I mean, it was working. And after 4 wins in a row, it was time for what everything had been leading up to, my Gold 3 rank up match.
Yeah, please.
So what did I actually do to make it out of silver? Well, I just took those principles from before and refined them. Besides just making sure I was in line of sight of my strategist, I also made the most of their area of effect healing. Whenever Loki used his runes, Cloak and Dagger coated the ground in her slug slime, or Luna started dancing, I played very aggressively, trying to do as much damage as possible. When I was deciding where to position myself, I considered the specific characters I was going up against and what ults they might use soon. I made sure to put myself in places where I would probably be safe from their specific ults. I used high ground to make the most of the splash damage on my attack, and I even started remembering to use the Luna Snow team up. I was trying to imagine the most likely timeline where I would die and prevent it from happening, either by being in a place where I would probably be safe or putting pressure on threatening targets to stop them from playing so aggressively. For example, if a Squirrel Girl ult was coming up, I would make sure I was standing on top of a box or something, and if a Moon Knight ult was coming up, I made sure not to stand too close to my teammates. I didn't have an issue pumping out enough healing to keep my teammates alive most of the time, but I knew I could do more to support them in other ways. I focused on not only healing, but protecting my team and most importantly, the other strategists. I kept tabs on my other support and who was ruining their day. I considered not only who my biggest threat was, but also who was causing the most trouble for my team in general. I prioritized attacking this target whenever they started to engage, and healing whoever they were attacking. I tried to focus on anticipating what ults were coming up and making sure that I had enough resources and space to support my teammates through them as best I could. At the start of a match, I would look at all the characters on the other team to see if there was anyone whose ult I could counter launcher with my ult, like Winter Soldier or Magic, and instead of using my ult as soon as it was ready, I would sometimes hold on to it to try to mitigate the enemy's ult. I started communicating more with my team, especially if a deadly ult was coming up. When my team was just throwing themselves down main and dying for 5 minutes, I would suggest maybe we should try going another way. And we would decide on simple strategies together so that we'd all be on the same page. Like when Scarlet Witch ults out in the open, just shoot her. Don't stop reminding people to group up, but also don't write off a fight just because you have one person that keeps going in alone and dying. Yeah, it would be ideal to have the whole team engaged together, but the other team is just as likely to have somebody who's doing the exact same thing. These are some of the things that I was thinking about during my second day, and it made a big difference. But there is one other piece of advice that's so important to every rank, and it applies to every player. Know when to take a break. If you're getting tired, tilted, if you're on a losing streak, losing morale, just take a break. Sleep on it, let your brain rest, reflect on what you could have done differently, and come back to it later. It's easy to get stuck in a cycle of blaming your teammates for every loss, but at the end of the day, the only person's gameplay you can really improve is your own. Every game and every death gives you an opportunity to learn where your weaknesses are and how you can improve them if you take some time to really analyze your gameplay. Sometimes by watching one of your game replays from the perspective of somebody else on your team, you can see a lot of things that you could have done differently to support your team better. And don't forget that at the end of the day, it's just a silly little game and it doesn't really matter what rank you're at as long as you're having a little bit of fun. Thanks for watching my video. I haven't made one in a while, so if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you left a like or even considered subscribing. I'd love to keep making more videos like this. I stream on Twitch and TikTok with my rats sometimes. The schedule is in the Discord. I'd like to keep sharing my Jeff journey with you all to see how far up the ladder I can take him. I'm planning on playing more Rivals on stream soon. I might even be playing it live right now. Please stop by if you'd like to join me or if you have any Jeff tips. And if this video didn't help you and you're still stuck in bronze or silver and can't figure out why, maybe leave a replay code and your game name in the comments and we'll do a few VOD reviews on stream sometime. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time or never again. Bye!